Today on Network Africa, leaders of the African Union Summit in Kigali, Rwanda approved the deployment of troops to South Sudan. Flight delays in Nigeria as airlines cut flight schedule by 40% over shortage of Jet A1 aviation fuel. And Nigeria names Paul Egwen as new Super Eagles technical advisor. Hello everyone, I am BC Adebayo. Leaders attending the African Union Assembly of Heads of State and Government in Kigali have agreed to send regional troops to South Sudan to maintain peace. The troops will be contributed from Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Sudan and Uganda. They'll work alongside a 12,000-strong UN peacekeeping force already in the country. Now, when discussions began last week over the deployment of troops, the South Sudanese President Salva Kiir had rejected the thought outright, but the UN says African troops need to be ready to engage in very difficult situations. But the United States is, however, considering sending troops to South Sudan, but not to fight alongside the AU and UN peacekeeping force. Their job will be to protect the U.S. Embassy in Juba. The U.S. says the move is to reassure the people and the government that it has no plans to target any government or military leaders or import special military equipment with the goal of destabilizing the nation. President Barack Obama says he'll be deploying up to 200 U.S. troops equipped with combat equipment to South Sudan to protect U.S. citizens and the embassy in Juba, with troops initially stationed in neighboring Uganda. Meanwhile, Uganda is saying no to a plan by the United Nations to impose an arms embargo on South Sudan, arguing it would weaken the country's army. President Yoweri Museveni made the comment in a statement released over the weekend following Mr. Ban Ki-moon's suggestion that the Security Council block arms sales to try and end more than 2 years of fighting in the world's newest nation. The Ugandan president argues the ban would destroy the local force which is needed to build a strong integrated army. He did not say if Uganda will take any more concrete action against the plan for South Sudan, but at least 272 people were killed during clashes that broke out in the capital 2 weeks ago. Morocco has requested to be reintegrated into the African Union, and while the leaders considered this request, Western Sahara, for which Morocco pulled out of the Union in the first place 32 years ago, says Morocco's return should only be possible if it recognizes the territory's independence. The country's new president, Ibrahim Ghali, who was attending the AU summit, made the comment at the summit on Monday. Back in 1975, Morocco annexed 2/3 of Western Sahara and then withdrew membership of the African Union because it recognized Western Sahara. The UN also recognizes Western Sahara as a nation. Well, joining us now for a review of the summit so far is Executive Secretary of the African Capacity Building Foundation, Professor Emmanuel Nadozie. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. Professor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, there already exists a ceasefire in South Sudan with promises from rival factions to maintain the peace agreement which was signed in August last year. Now, is there any need for the deployment of more troops to South Sudan?
Well, yes, you have to realize that there have been intermittent conflicts erupting every now and then in South Sudan. And when you think that the peace process has become solidified, then you'll see some problems, starting all over again. I think this is what is driving the decision by the African Union to find a way to really find a lasting solution by deploying forces that can prevent this kinds of spontaneous conflicts from erupting once again.
Well, while leaders have tried negotiations and now they're talking about troops deployment, are there any other options that are not being explored in resolving the crisis in South Sudan?
No, I think all the efforts are being made in all fronts. Recall very well that there was quite a strong effort that was driven by the regional countries, member countries who are there under the auspices of the African Union to really bring the two parties, namely the president and the vice president, together to have them to discuss and agree on a solution to the problem. And so on the diplomatic front, there has been quite a lot of intensive effort, and as well as on all the other fronts, to really address some of the differences that are causing these problems. But it seems to me that when everybody thinks that a lot of progress has been made and that peace has been found and an agreement has been reached, we still find ourselves in a situation where there's renewed conflict. And this has really devastated South Sudan, causing untold misery on the South Sudanese, with thousands and thousands of refugees and people who have lost their lives in the process.
And what do you make of Morocco's request for readmittance into the EU after more than 3 decades?
Well, I think it's very good for all African countries to become members of the African Union. As you know very well, Morocco was an independent decision by Morocco to withdraw from the African Union so many years ago. I think it was in the 70s or 75 or so, over the dispute about Western Sahara. And so this unilateral decision to withdraw can only be reversed by Morocco deciding to come back. And I think it's good news because when a country out of 54 countries in the continent is the only one that is out there, I think it's beginning to realize that this isolation is not in its best interest, and that if it wants to really address the differences that they have with Algeria and with all the other African countries that recognize Western Sahara, that it probably be best to address this problem within the AU framework, the African Union framework, rather than to stay outside and try to address the problem. So I think it's a welcome development. But it seems to me that it should be an unconditional reintegration.
Well, you talked about it being unconditional. So do you agree with Western Sahara being right in laying conditions for the recognition before they can be admitted again?
No, I don't believe that any of the parties should put any conditions because if already the African Union recognizes Western Sahara as a country. And so I don't think they would have to go back on that. And Morocco, that unilaterally withdrew, should come back and simply say we want to come back, recognizing that there are still some differences when it comes to their position and that of the rest of or the majority of the African countries on Western Sahara. And then the discussions and other kinds of dialogue that needs to take place will then begin to happen to be able to find an agreement on a peaceful solution to the problem of Western Sahara.
Well, Prof, Morocco says it wants to regain its strategic importance in the Union. Now, how important were they when they were part of the Union before 1984?
Yes, Morocco is a very important member of the African Union. At least from an economic front, it is a country that is doing extremely well in terms of economic growth and development and also economic transformation. And so it is a country that has a lot to contribute to the African Union, at least from the economic front, and could serve as a model that others can emulate in terms of the success story that it embodies. So Morocco was an important member of the African Union before it withdrew. And I think the return of Morocco would also provide an opportunity for this country, which is a significant country that has a sizable economy, to again come in and contribute positively, both from an economic perspective, but also in terms of enriching the dialogue that will help the continent to move forward.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Nnadozie, for joining us. When Network Africa returns, President Robert Mugabe still has it in for the Zimbabwean pastor who's calling protests in the country.